Well, hi everyone. It's good to see you all here. Lots of familiar faces today. It's my honor to welcome all of you to our second installment of the Fall 2024 JAMI Career Panel Series. Our topic for today is Recruiting Insider, how to work with executive search firms and employment agencies. So a really interesting topic and lots to talk about today. My name is Yas Hardaway, and I'm the Executive Director of Career Services at GSEP. And this program is a partnership between GSEP Career Services and our GSEP Alumni Relations Department. So some of you have been to our JAMI sessions before, but others may be new and may be wondering, what is JAMI? JAMI is a Swahili term for community, and our JAMI Communities of Practice programs are designed to provide up-to-date labor market information in the fields of education and psychology. In the fall, we have our JAMI Career Panel series, like the one today, which will be a moderated Q&A panel. And in the spring, we have our JAMI Career Chats, which are interactive breakout room conversations. So without further ado, let me share our agenda for today. So I'll first start out by sharing our learning outcomes, what we hope that you will gain from our time together, talk about a few housekeeping items, and then I'll turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Dorn, who will introduce the panel and lead us in a moderated Q&A panel discussion. Then following the panel, we'll have some time to answer questions from all of you. So my colleague, Sofia Enriquez, will provide a time for us to address questions to the panel directly and give them a chance to respond. And then we'll close out by sharing some resources that we think might be helpful for you, and also look at what's next for the month of November. So what do we hope that you will gain from our time today? Well, at GSEP Career Services, our vision is that every graduate would have the clarity, the confidence, and the community to be able to access, thrive in, and transform the future workplace. So during our program today, we hope that you will gain clarity about the next step in your career planning. We hope that you will gain confidence in your ability to successfully move toward your next career objective. And we hope that you will see this as an opportunity to connect with other industry professionals from our Pepperdine family. Okay, some brief housekeeping items. As you may have noticed, the session is being recorded and it will be posted later to our participant drive, as well as our GSEP YouTube playlist dedicated specifically for our JAMI Communities of Practice recordings. Live transcription is provided if you would like to use it. And then I just invite all of you to use the rename tool next to your name to include your first and last name so that we can see who is in our Zoom room today. If you are able to be on camera, that would be great so we can see your faces. If not, we certainly understand and appreciate you still making the time to be here. My colleague Franya will be putting information and resources in the chat. So the one that she'll be putting in now is our JAMI Communities of Practice participant drive. So in this drive, you'll see folders for all of our previous JAMI terms. And in the one for today, you'll find the speaker lineup. So you can read about the bios of our speakers today, as well as the recording, which we'll post at a later time. I also invite you throughout the session to put your questions and comments in the chat, and Sophia will compile those and use those in our follow-up Q&A session after the panel. Okay, so now without further ado, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Renee Dorn, who's also an alumni of our doctoral program. Dr. Dorn will introduce herself and our panelists today. Dr. Dorn.
Thank you so much, Yaz, and hello, everyone. Welcome to our JAMI session, as we like to call it. I'm Dr. Renee Dorn. I'm GSEP's Director of Alumni Relations, and I'm always so proud to be able to introduce our Pepperdine alumni. They're giving of their time and their talent to join us today. And today we actually have 4 alums from Pepperdine that will be joining us. So let me go ahead and introduce the alumni today. Our first one is A. Marie Ramirez. Hi, A. Marie, welcome.
Hi, Dr. Dorn. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. I,
Amy, yes,
yes,
I
go
was
ahead.
gonna say, Amy Marie, go ahead and tell us, give us your background, what Pepperdine program you graduated from, and what you're currently doing today.
Absolutely. So I graduated in 1997 from Pepperdine, Seaver College with a music performance degree of all things. And I've been with Robert Half for the past 28 years. Robert Half is the world's oldest and largest specialized staffing firm, where we have about 250 US offices, 100 international offices, and we focus on niche specialty areas like IT, accounting and finance, marketing and PR, legal, administrative, and we have different areas that focus on contract, direct hire placement, and executive placement. I'm currently a senior vice president focused in the greater LA area. So I do direct hire placement for accounting and finance professionals at all levels in their career. I'm excited to be here today. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Amy Marie. And we're going to hear a little bit more about what she does as we go through the panel discussion. So thank you. And next we have Billy Wakeham. Hi, Billy. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Now, Billy, tell us what program you graduated from Pepperdine and
Mhm.
your background and what you're currently doing today.
Yes, so I graduated a bit earlier this year with my master's degree in psychology from Pepperdine. I did the online psychology program and had a wonderful experience. But since then, I've been working at Insight Global. So we're one of the leading staffing and professional services companies in the United States. I currently sit out of our Sacramento office. I started out as a recruiter here, and I'm now an account manager. So I help manage different client relationships and deliver different tailored staffing solutions for clients across the United States as well as internationally. But really excited to chat with you all today about how to best partner with recruiting agencies, whether it's the job search, networking, or expanding different skill sets. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you, Billy. Next, we have a three-time Pepperdine alum, and that is Dr. Brian Harmon. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Dorn. I'm wearing my favorite Pepperdine sweater today, of course. And the programs that I did at Pepperdine were my bachelor's in management and my MBA, both at the Grazie Dio Business School. And then after that, I went on to the GSEP PhD program for my studies in global leadership and change.
Wonderful. Now tell us about the program or the company that you work with, because this is your company, right? That's correct.
It is, yeah. It's called the BMH Career Accelerator. I've been around since 2019, and since then, my team and I have helped 450 professionals land higher paying jobs they love. It's a really start to finish process. So everything from resume, introduction story, LinkedIn profile optimization through job search, interview prep, job offer negotiations. And it's all within a community of really awesome clients that want to go farther and faster. I have recruiters on my team, and so this topic is a big part of my day-to-day work. Happy to be here.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here. And last but not least, we have another Pepperdine alum, Matthew Cruz. Welcome, Matthew.
Thank you, Dr. Renee. Just 1 degree for me. So I aspire to be Brian one day, but yeah, I graduated in 2018 with my undergrad bachelor's degree in accounting. And after a very short stint in accounting, realized it was not for me. And actually started my career in recruiting at a CPA firm where I've been for the past 5 years. So I'm actually a director of executive recruiting with GHJ. We're a national CPA firm, and we have an executive search practice where we do both direct hire and temporary staffing, primarily in the finance and accounting space. And so I recruit primarily on the direct hire side across all industries for finance and accounting, with a personal passion for the nonprofit space. So definitely excited to be here and excited to share more about recruiting. And I always say it's like America's best kept secret is recruiting. So I'm happy to be here and appreciate the time.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you for joining us. Thank you. Now let's get started in this panel discussion, because I know everyone has a lot of questions and I have a lot of questions for you. So we've been talking about executive search firms, executive recruiters, even employment agencies, headhunters. How would you define for everyone what an executive search firm is and what it does, or even an employment agency and what that does? And I'm opening this up to the panel.
I'll take this one. To me, executive search is sort of people at an executive level, so C-suite, VPs, that type of thing. Employment agencies tend to help people find jobs and help companies find people, whether it's on a contract or a permanent basis. That's where I work in that space, and we're typically paid by the company, not by the candidate. And so those would be, I would say, the major highlighting differences between those.
Okay, so that's good to know, to at least get that start, that basis. So we have a lot of students who are online, alumni who may be looking for employment. So if we come to, say, an executive search firm or an employment agency, what are you looking for as a possible candidate that would be good for a company that you are helping to search for a position? What would that individual have to do? What will their resume have to look like? What are you looking for in those resumes? I know those are a lot of questions that I'm throwing out there, but I want everybody to be able to answer this from their perspective. So what would an individual have to do if they're going to an executive search firm to look for employment?
I'm happy to take this one. I mean, loaded question. I mean, we're just coming out of the gate.
Yes.
It's a great question. Yeah, I think the first thing, if you're a potential candidate, if you're looking to kind of start working with an employment agency, is to study who you're reaching out to, right? So, for example, I mentioned I primarily recruit for finance and accounting. So if you're looking for a career in HR or IT and you say, Matt, can you help me out? I can point you in the right direction. But as far as the recruitment aspect of things, I wouldn't be working with the right people to help connect you with. So I think the first thing is realizing there's lots of different employment agencies and executive search firms. All of them specialize in different things. So starting there and tailoring it to, the career that you want to be in.
Yeah, I love that point, Matt. And I think that another huge thing to focus on is, apart from researching who you're reaching out to, is starting to game plan how you're going to market yourself, right? Research is a huge part of that. But I think as far as being able to market yourself, you want to know what kind of specific roles are you targeting? Is there a specific job title? Are you newer to the industry? Have you spent time updating your resume so that anybody that comes across your profile knows exactly what you've done in the past and what you're looking for? I think, updating your LinkedIn is huge. And being prepared as well for when you do have a conversation with a recruiter, executive recruiter, employment agency recruiter. What does that conversation sound like? How do you want that to go? How are you going to pitch yourself to this recruiter as well? Because every conversation really does count. So I think research, preparation, and marketing yourself according to the opportunities that you're interested in is a huge part of the process as well.
Okay, so thank you for that information. Now, Brian, at your company, how do you help an individual that's coming to you saying that they're looking for employment?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Renee. And so because my firm is more on the career coaching side, we're with the candidate. And so we're getting them prepared for those executive recruiter conversations. I think to your original point, the resumes that people show me leading up to them engaging with me, I find that a resume that's very generic, that, for Matthew, for example, if it doesn't have the Matthew magic, if it just reads like a job description, if it's very vague and broad, I can't understand the impact and consequence of his work. That's where I find a lot of people really need help. You have to ask them some questions, really extract all that information, and then put it together in a beautiful, compelling narrative across all of their items. That's LinkedIn, introduction story, cover letter, resume document. And just a single resume takes my team and I over 15 hours to create. It's a really deep process. We want it to be a real career asset that they can take out there as the flaming sword of power in their job search. But I think LinkedIn too is a place where people don't pay enough attention. I see that as like the insurance plan for your career. And if you're not taking it seriously, not getting recommendations, not really filling out the different sections of the profile, LinkedIn's not going to reward you. They want people that are on the platform using the different pieces, nice, cohesive, gorgeous personal brand. And first impressions make a big difference in the job search. So we help our clients get prepared for that really strong first impression. And that goes even through interview prep. We do a mock interview. We're giving them really deep, detailed feedback on their top work stories. And that way they can have those conversations with executive recruiters with confidence.
Okay, so all of you have mentioned you should have a good resume, you should have your be able to market yourself well. Now, AI, how does that come into play? Because many people I know would look at a job description, put that information in AI, and then AI can create a resume for them. Is that something that you would suggest? Is that something that you have seen when you look at resumes or curriculum vitas, or what is it that you think about AI and how does that fit into preparing yourself for when you are looking for a position?
I think AI can be a double-edged sword. I think it's a great tool to get kind of a starting point. It's really difficult to write your own resume. I'm sure Brian can attest to that. It's much easier to have help in that regard. But I think you do want to make sure when you're using AI that you're not creating something that's not accurate. Sometimes I see candidates will have an AI resume, and then when you dig into the details, they don't know what's there or they can't talk about it. So as somebody that sends resumes to lots of different kinds of hiring managers, I think in general, people tend to look at your resume for 30 seconds and decide whether or not to interview you based off of it. But then when you're in the interview, they're digging into the accomplishments that you've listed. And so you want to make sure there's transparency and honesty in your resume. So I think use AI as a starting point, not so much as an ending point.
Okay. Now, Marie, you had mentioned when you source out the candidates to the different companies that you work for or that you're looking for a position. How do you select those candidates? When you're looking at all those different resumes, how do you say, these are the ones that I think you should go for, or these are the ones who I think would be great for a position? What stands out to you in those resumes?
Well, I think a resume that's accomplishment oriented, but yet if you look at it briefly, the important things come through to you. That's what I usually see my clients gravitate towards when they have a selection. As far as how I select, I think, as recruiters, typically we're partnering with the candidate and we're partnering with the client. We have a financial vested and just feel good interest in making sure that we make a good match. So I think, for my firm, we always interview all of the candidates, and then we'll select candidates to present to each opportunity based on the needs of that client. So a candidate can be a great candidate, but not be right for this job, and vice versa. So I think toward that end, it's about making the match. And so I would say it's not really to answer your question, but I think remembering that you're partnering with that recruiter and that you sort of have the end result in mind, that you want to get the right job, not just get a job, and putting the pieces together to be transparent about what you're looking for and whether or not it actually fits that role. And then if so, obviously moving forward.
Okay, good to know. Any other panelists have a comment about that as well?
Yeah, I'd love to add on here. Marie, I think you made a great point about a resume having specifics, especially if you can provide any metrics or, numerical values of things that you accomplished or, projects you drove, whatever it may be, whatever's relevant to your industry, right? And I think you'd be hard pressed to find any firm or agency that just submits resumes without actually speaking to a candidate. A huge part, and a lot of agencies take pride in this, is a screening process. And that's kind of what happens before a resume would be sent over to a potential client or company. And I think what's become more and more apparent is the importance of soft skills, right? how are you coming to that first phone call with a recruiter? Are you prepared? Are you excited? You know, polite, things like this. That's going to be really important. And then any subsequent conversations that you do have, are you kind of maintaining that enthusiasm, professionalism? You know, are you responsive? Things like that. This is all really important to us recruiters because at the end of the day, it's indicative of, you know, how you might be in the role for the client as well.
Now, let me,
I'll
oh,
echo
yeah, go
just
ahead, Matthew.
real quick, and we're all repeating the same things, and I think it's because it's what we see every day. I think with resumes specifically, I always go back to your MSA. What have you made? What have you saved? And what have you achieved, you know, for a company in your career? And I think it's having those things on your resume, but number two, when you're working with recruiters, how well can you tell your story, right? And Brian mentioned this earlier, that first impression, like, do you have your elevator pitch? Do you know how to walk through your background? Why maybe you left a company or why you're in your current role? Why are you looking to leave? I think that's the biggest thing to do as you're starting to, you know, look to make a change in your careers, you know, making sure you know your story better than anyone else does. So that's, I would just echo those 2 points. I think everyone brought up some really great points.
Now, Matthew, I'm going to stick with you because something that you just said, talking about changing careers. Now, I know one thing we've seen at the graduate schools, sometimes people come in and they want to change careers from what they've been doing in the past. So when you are looking at a resume, and they may have different jobs, different areas of expertise, is that something that is more acceptable today? Because I know in the past, people used to say, oh, if you have not been working in one particular industry for a certain number of years, then you aren't as dedicated to the job. So has it become more lenient? Is it better to have a more diverse type of resume? What are you seeing now? And what are you experiencing?
That's a great question. I'm glad you stuck with me. Again, I'm a recovering accountant, so I've made the change. I've changed careers. And I think I had a lot of people in my corner who say, hey, this is very possible for you, but there's a couple of things you need to focus on as you go out and you know, look at a career in recruiting. A couple of things I would say. Number one, there's always transferable skills, no matter what industry you're in. I think Billy mentioned this, soft skills right now are extremely important, how you communicate and how you're able to work with others. That's going to be important anywhere you go. So making sure you're able to emphasize that and highlight that in your experience, it's going to help you go wherever you want to go. I think in terms of resumes and trying to, you know, maybe tailor those to a different career, I tell most people have a like a cornerstone resume, a main resume that you can use for almost anything. And you can tailor that for different positions, different industries. If you're maybe not sure where you want to go, but you know you're not in the right space, having that one resume you can always go back to and reference, make tweaks, add in different skills based on the position. That's going to position you to be successful in whatever career you want to move into. And then one other point you touched on in terms of, I think, the stigma. I'd say one thing that really helped the silver lining of COVID and the pandemic several years ago is there's so many people who said, you know, maybe I'm not in the right space. Maybe I want to start looking. And so I think it's become a lot more normalized. I think there's a lot more folks who are, you know, looking to move away from, you know, careers they've been in, whether it's a year or 10 years or 20 years. So my advice would just be, you know, to be curious, talk to as many people in the industry that you want to be in as you can to make sure it's the right fit for you. And from there, you know, having those connections, networking, you'll kind of know the right direction to go in.
Oh, that's fantastic. Anybody else? Anyone else have comments for that question when you're trying to change careers?
One thing that I would add is this is really for everyone, but very important to a transition is you have to keep a list of wins, whether it's the skills you've gained, the job descriptions you've had, the trainings and certifications, projects you've completed, the metrics and scale and scope of your work. That will help. I see the resume as a backwards looking document, but that doesn't mean you can't be selective about what transferable, translatable skills you highlight that map to those jobs in a separate space. So it starts with that nice overview document of your win list. And then that way you have the information. It's hard to go back to a job I had 7 years ago and remember all the little details.
I think also a lot of times people are willing to give you an opportunity if they know you a little bit. So I would say if you're looking to change things, looking at whether there's an opportunity for you to get some or all of those skill sets within your current company. Or if you're not working, maybe look into internships or contract work that exposes you to things. Because then if you have some of the skill set and you're there and they know you and they like you, they're much more willing to sort of take a chance and give you more new things.
Yeah. There's a funny, I have a little dog. Her name's Lulu. She's 5 pounds. And if I post a picture of my dog on LinkedIn, it's like, well, whatever, Brian, you have a cute dog. Great. But if I tell you about how powerful it's been to have her in my office while I'm working remote and it's lonely in here, that's really important. So I think the same thing kind of goes is like, be unapologetic about wanting to transfer into something else and say, well, what is the key takeaway? Like with my dog, the key takeaway is not feeling lonely here. What are those key learnings that apply to the change that you're going after?
I think
That's
also, oh, my apologies. One last point on this is don't underestimate the value and the power of the network that you've already built. As Brian said, you know, LinkedIn, take a look at what your network looks like there. And it might not be that, you know, your friend from college can get you a job right away with no transferable skills or relevant skills to that industry, but you could do an informational interview with them and say, hey, what has your career journey been like? Have you ever made a change? Because a lot of times a resume or a LinkedIn professional experience history won't tell the full story, right? So I think, you know, reach out to your network, ask questions. Like Matthew said, be curious. And if you're really considering making a change, you can start to gather a game plan for yourself that way as well.
That's excellent. This is wonderful information. I'm sitting here taking notes myself. So, and I want everyone who's listening, all the students and alumni, if you have some questions, please put those questions in the chat, because in about 10 minutes or so, we're going to transfer to the Q&A section, and then you'll be able to get some of those questions answered. So please go ahead. If you have questions, put those in the chat. All right. Let's go ahead and continue. Now, we are in the Gen Z era, and you hear a lot of things about Gen Z going into the workplace, and actually being prepared to go in the workplace. So what have you seen when it comes to executive recruiting and even the resumes and the preparation that Gen Zers need to have before they go into the workplace?
I think the multi-generational workspace is always really interesting. I mean, as somebody that's done recruiting for 28 years, I've seen a lot of evolution in this regard.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it goes on both sides, right? The Gen X and the baby boomers need to learn to appreciate what's awesome about millennials and Gen Z and soon to be Alpha. But I think Gen Z needs to respect process too, right? So whenever you're newer to the workforce, I think you want to bring what you have that's innovative, but yet be respectful of tradition. So I think having a professional picture on your LinkedIn, I think being prepared for your interviews, thinking about how you dress is still important, because these are not things that are as conservative as they were 7-10 years ago even, but I think there's still things that matter to certain hiring managers. And so you want to put your best foot forward always. And so I think, you know, that holistic approach is important.
That's very good information, especially when you were talking about preparing for the interviews and attire.
Yes.
Because I've been hearing that a lot. Yes. Any other comments from the panelists, which you've seen when it comes to intergenerational workplaces?
I think that was really well said. I think you hit a lot of the points. What I've seen going around recently on social media is wearing shorts to interviews, right? And I think that's a perfect example. Like, okay, there's probably a line somewhere, and it's both sides. You know, it's Gen X, Gen Z. It's you know, the boomer generation. It's realizing there's good and bad from every generation, but there's also norms. There's the way we do things, and first impressions mean everything. So I would just say for those coming into the workforce, those that are new, as much as you have something to offer, also realize there's people who have, been in the industry, been in their careers for a long time, and there's a lot to learn from them as well. So I think it certainly goes both ways.
Excellent, excellent. I have one last question for everyone before we go to the Q&A section. We have a career services team, and they are available to work with students and alumni. So maybe as a student or an alum who is looking for a job, when they go to career services, say for help, what should they ask career services to help them with?
I didn't do this at Pepperdine, but in my undergrad at San Diego State, I worked at career services. And I think one of the most valuable things that you can do while you have the opportunity and have those resources is schedule some time to go over your resume, to ask for feedback, and to be able to edit it in real time, as well as ask about any networking events. Are there career fairs coming up? Are there panels just like these? Like, what can I attend? How can I get my face out there? How can I learn as much as I can? Because it really is such a privilege to have those resources available to you.
I'm a huge fan of career services. I constantly am suggesting to candidates that they look to their undergrad or master's degree programs. That's usually what I see in accounting and finance more than the PhD. But I think the ability to not only get feedback, but in my world, I feel like a lot of my clients that want to hire recent grads, particularly into a growth program or a rotational program, usually participate in on-campus recruiting or working with the career services. So I think when I was an undergrad at Pepperdine, I found a lot of value with the career services team because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was a music major because that's how I paid for college. Pepperdine was generous enough to give me a scholarship, but I knew that was not what I wanted to do career-wise. And so I was at a crossroads of figuring out, so now what do I do, right? And so being able to participate in on-campus interviews and to be able to really refine what I wanted to do was really valuable to me, and probably, frankly, one of the most valuable parts of my degree.
Excellent, excellent. Now, we have a little bit more time, so I have another question. If I have a business and I'm interested in looking for candidates, what would I expect if I go to one of your search firms and ask for assistance? How can you help me as a business owner?
So again, going back to the same way it works for a job seeker, not everybody is the right fit for what we do. So for myself, I work with primarily small middle market companies across all industries, as I said, for finance and accounting roles. So what you could expect is either, number one, I always like to stay in, what do you need, right? Do you need a temporary contract, interim solution? Do you need a permanent solution, which is a direct hire professional? And so, depending on your need, I'll either introduce you to somebody on my team who works on the temporary consulting staffing, or if you work with me, you could expect us to basically learn more about your company. That's always number one. We want to learn more about the company, your mission, the things you won't find out, on a website, the culture, the people you'll meet there, the people you'll work with. And we go out to our network. So the job seekers we know, the people we've met, the people who we've, talked to and interviewed, who have sent us their resumes. And we're essentially the matchmakers. So you can expect us to say, here's the 3 or 4 people I've met with who I think would be really great for your company, and you should interview them. The last thing you can expect is for you to hire somebody I bring you, because what I always say is we only bring people that are a good match, that we think are good for your company. So that's what you could expect from most recruiting agencies.
Ryan, let me go back to you. So if I have a company, how would you be able to help me with your company?
Yeah, so we really support clients that are going into corporate roles. So we don't work with businesses that way. So it's a little different because we're on the candidate side, but I will tell you that my experience with executive recruiters has been incredible, very eye-opening. These are savvy, sophisticated professionals who understand the job market, understand candidates. They're the ultimate matchmakers. And so I think the thing I would say for businesses is listen to executive recruiters. They are very smart. And some of my best advice and how I guide my clients has come from executive recruiters.
All righty. Well, at this time, I've been seeing a lot of questions pop up in the chat. So I'm going to pass this over to Sophia Enriquez so that she can get started with the Q&A and we can answer as many questions from all of you as possible. So I want to thank all of the panelists for joining us today. And at this time, I'm passing it on to Sophia. All right, Sophia, it's up to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dorn. So we have a few questions. The first one I want to ask, this has been so eye-opening for me as well. So thank you so much to our wonderful Pepperdine alumni for joining us here as panelists. The first one I have is, what's the best way to make the initial call / email to a recruiting firm?
I can jump in here. So
Billy, I think you're still muted. Or no, you're good.
can you hear me okay? Everything working okay? Okay, awesome. I think that this kind of goes back to one of the first questions that we answered and a point that Matthew made. It's really important to do your research here, because there's going to be points of contact that you should be speaking with, and then people that are just not going to be able to help you in this area. So I think start by researching if there is a specific job posted on an employment agency, their website, or on their LinkedIn. Then try and trace it back to a specific recruiter or account manager, and you can message them on LinkedIn. You can apply. You can email them if there's a contact, if there's any contact info on there. But I really want to stress the importance of that research, just because there's a lot that happens behind the scenes, and you want to make yourself as relevant as possible, and basically let the universe know, like, hey, I'm a good fit for this role. Like, I want to talk to you about this, right?
Thank you, Billy.
Sophia, can I ask a follow-up to that?
Yeah, of course.
So let's say I'm a job seeker and I haven't seen anything in particular posted, but I really want to be able to partner with a search agency just to help support my job search as an additional strategy. So do I go on the website and just try to make contact with one of their recruiters? How can I engage a search firm if there's not something specifically that I'm targeting? I get that question a lot.
I think what Billy said is perfect. You want to do your research to find a recruiter that's in your specialty area, right? So, and Matthew touched on this too. You don't want to reach out to an accounting recruiter if you're looking for a job in IT. But beyond that, I think just reach out and say that you want to connect. I mean, recruiters want to talk to candidates that are in their wheelhouse. So I would find somebody that covers the geographical and specialty area that you want to focus on, and then just do it. Reach out.
It's super easy on LinkedIn too, because if you type in, for example, executive recruiter, finance and accounting, search, and then filter by people, there's your list. It's really easy.
We're out here. And I think, Yas, even in your question, I think, because I don't think there's a right way to reach out to a recruiter. I just think it's being intentional. And even the way you asked that question, hey, I noticed you don't have a job opening. That's good for me, but I'd love to have a conversation. We love to hear that. I think as recruiters, I'm happy to. Let's schedule some time, video call, phone call, I'll learn more about your background, because not everything is transactional. It's not always I have a job for you and let's put you together. Sometimes it's let's connect now, and if something is right down the line, even better. If not, maybe we just keep in touch, and I can be a resource for you and your network. So I think just being intentional and reaching out, and providing, just asking the question and providing information. Say, here's my number, here's my email. I just would love to have a conversation. I think that's always the right place to start.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was super helpful for me as well. I know we talked about diversity within your positions and also loyalty within the job, but some of our audience came in a little bit late, so I just want to do a reminder. How important is job tenure to recruiters when assessing resumes, and has that evolved over time?
I think it's in the eye of the beholder. I have some clients that consider 4 years a long time, and some clients that consider 4 years too short. So what I would say is that word that Matthew used earlier, intention, I think is important. I don't think you should leave or move jobs without purpose. I think if there's purpose behind why you're moving from one to another, then the tenure sort of takes care of itself. And recruiters will try to work with you a little bit to soften that if there's a concern. But I think if you leave a job every year, 2 years, 3 years for the same kind of a thing, and there's not a story that you can tell about why you made those decisions, then I do think potential employers are going to be concerned of how long you're going to stay.
Thank you. Yeah, that's so important as a reminder to know your why. We also have another question. How much coaching are executive recruiters slash search firms willing to do? Do you give constructive feedback to candidates? And if so, how?
I do a lot of coaching, not to make somebody something that they're not, but to understand their why and help them talk about it to make the right match. But I think like anything, it sort of depends on the specific recruiter, and where their comfort zone is or what they're passionate about.
How do recruiters support salary negotiations?
This is a great question. Does anybody want to take it? I have an answer. If not, I just want to be the only one answering.
I'm happy to. Yeah, but it is a great question. And I think this is one of those things that not a lot of job seekers candidates understand. We're here to support that as well. And it's helpful to have somebody in your corner. One thing I tell people often is I want you to focus on the job, on the fit, on the company, and make sure everything else makes sense. And when it comes to the money and negotiating what's right, Miriam mentioned this earlier. We also know the market as recruiters, right? So part of what we're doing on the back end, sometimes things you don't see, is working with the company to say, hey, maybe your budget isn't quite right. Maybe we need to make a little bit of a higher offer. More often than not, that's what we're doing. And so I think it's helpful to work with the recruiter, but also to be very transparent about your salary expectations. It's one thing I say often is I'm on the same team as you. But if you leave me in the dark and you're very vague about, well, I'm looking for this or that, and you don't give me an exact kind of answer, I can't really help unless I know what you're looking for. So I think being transparent with recruiters is going to help you at the end of the day to negotiate your salary.
I
have to add something. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Brian.
I was just going to say, in my experience, I mean, I spent 20 something years in supply chain. All I was doing every day is negotiating contracts. The only people better than me at negotiating are recruiters. They are strong negotiators. So I try to let my clients have the executive recruiters do that part of the thing when it is a certain type of a contract, like if it's a retained exclusive search. And that has always worked to their benefit because recruiters know how to negotiate.
Recruiters are usually paid a percentage of whatever you start at. So a lot of us make either some or all of our money based on commission, based off your starting salary. So toward that end, we're sort of in the same boat you're in. I mean, I always tell my candidates, I don't want to price you out of a job that you want. That's where I think the transparency that Matthew mentions is so important, so that we don't negotiate so hard that they go with somebody cheaper. But on the flip side, we have every vested interest in getting you as much money as possible. So it's finding that sweet spot of not pricing you out of something, but not leaving any money on the table either. And we do it all day. So it's a natural conversation for us. So it makes it a lot easier to just put it in the hands of the recruiter.
Thank you. That was so good because, yeah, one of the questions is who's responsible for the cost of executive recruiters and search firms? So that's really great. I think sometimes storytelling is important. when talking about career transitions. Can you share a success story where maybe an unconventional candidate became the perfect fit for a high-level role?
I've got the exact person in mind when you mentioned that. And I do think I go back to all the time. My wife, she jokes me all the time when she hears me interviewing candidates, because I always say, tell me the Brian story, tell me the Amiri story. And she's like, okay, he's interviewing a candidate. I think storytelling is so important. So the person I have in mind, so we placed a CFO for a nonprofit organization here in Los Angeles about a year ago now, who came from a very non-traditional background. He was a Big Four CPA, worked at Boeing, large companies, total opposite of what you would think would be right for a small nonprofit organization. And as we talked with this candidate, he told us more about his story outside of his career, which was him. Me and my wife do a lot of philanthropy work. We work with this organization actually, where we've gone and volunteered often. It happens to be the exact same organization that we're recruiting for. So there was some connectivity there. And so we were able to go to our client, to the CEO of this organization, and say, hey, we met with this person, totally not what you're looking for, but we think he could be really interesting. You got to meet him, right? Because there was a passion that he had for the organization. And so I think those are the things that if he was just to walk us through his resume, we would have never known, hey, there's some connective tissue here. But that's why I think it's important to talk about your passions, talk about what's important to you, because you never know what that connection be. And to conclude that story, we ended up placing him there. And they're like, this past year has been amazing. They say, hey, he's probably going to be the next, president of this, organization, right? So it just goes to show that there's a little more than a resume and a LinkedIn profile that goes into, placing people.
I love hearing those stories and bringing the human side to career as well. We have one last question. Let's see. What are the differences that job seekers need to keep in mind when it comes to an internal like company recruiter versus an external one? Are there any misconceptions that are not true, do you think?
I have to say one thing, it's really important here. That advice I was giving about let your executive recruiter negotiate for you, that's only if it's a search firm or external. Internal recruiter, exact opposite. You have to give no transparency. You have to negotiate on your own behalf. It's a very different scenario. And when your economic interests are on the line, the two key things in a negotiation are collaboration and transparency. You have to take away the transparency. You really don't want to lowball yourself or undercut yourself if they were willing to offer you more for a job otherwise. But for that reason, you have to be overly collaborative, even apologetic. You're going to use very, very friendly language like, hey, I can't share my salary expectations right now, but you have my word. I'm more than happy to be flexible once a written offer is received. So the collaboration part goes up, the transparency goes down. Whereas in the external search firm, executive recruiters, full transparency, full collaboration, let them negotiate on your behalf. It'll go better and it'll go faster without you involved.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Brian. Anyone else have any last thoughts?
On this last question, because I think Usman raises it, and it's a great one. An internal recruiter just does that one company. So they're really there to look out for the interest of the company, whereas an external external recruiter has all of these different customers, right? So if this isn't a fit, something else can be a fit. And exactly what Matthew said, they can sort of sell you into something where sometimes an internal recruiter is screening out.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes.
I think that a key word here is, and this is not throwing shade to any internal recruiters. We know them, we love them. But I think that a huge part of this is partnership, right? There's partnership on both ends, both for a recruiter on the client and then the candidate facing side as well. And that was a great point, just because one opportunity doesn't work out. It's important to keep building relationships with these recruiters, because there's going to be another opportunity down the line that they know you're a perfect fit for, because they know everything about you. You guys were transparent from the get-go, like Brian said. And I think kind of nurturing and fostering that partnership will take you a long way as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much to our panelists. we are so grateful for the time you shared with us and your wisdom and expertise, even giving us language that we can use in our interviews. So thank you so much for being here with us. I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Gary Younger, to speak more about enrollment and admission. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophia. Gary Younger here. I am the Enrollment Services Officer at Pepperdine Graduate School of Education in Psychology. We offer 17 programs here, and I cover 2 specifically. Those would be the Master of Science in Applied Behavior Analysis program and the Doctorate in Psychology or Doctorate in Clinical Psychology, otherwise known as the PsyD program. I work with 5 other colleagues that work or cover the other 15 programs. But generally in my role or the role of my colleagues, we're fielding the many inquiries that we get every day. We are providing program information. We're providing application information or admissions information. What does it take to get admitted into our program? And we're reviewing applications as well. If you have any questions about the programs that I cover specifically, please feel welcome to reach out to me directly. The information was put in the chat to get a hold of me. And if you're interested in any of the other programs that we offer, please feel free to reach out to me as well. I'll be happy to forward you to the appropriate colleague that I work with that can help you more directly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Gary. And thank you again to our panelists. Just the fact that you would be willing to take time out of your busy schedule to volunteer and share your expertise and wisdom really says something about who you are as people, in addition to your dedication to helping build our professional community at GSEP. So thank you again. You all heard, different questions and comments around AI. So I do want to share with you some resources that might be helpful. But first, raise your hand if you know there are AI tools, but it's overwhelming. There's so many out there. Which ones do I use? How do I use them? I often hear this comment. So what we have done through GSEP Career Services is we've created, and Franya will put this link in the chat, an AI toolkit. And so these are just very brief, about 1-minute videos that feature different AI career tools that you can leverage in your career development process, whether you're exploring career options, whether you're applying for jobs, whether you're negotiating salaries. Again, you're using it as a tool, as an assistant, right? Not having it do all the work for you or copy and pasting directly. But it's a great way to be able to leverage what's out there in order to stay relevant and also to make your process a bit more efficient. And one that I'd like to highlight in particular is the resource Career Flow AI. It has a number of different features, but one in particular is a LinkedIn profile optimization tool. And so you heard our panelists today talk a lot about being active on LinkedIn, having a strong LinkedIn profile. So this is a great resource that you can use to help you spruce up your LinkedIn profile, as it gives you some customized suggestions based on what it is that you're looking for. Okay, so now I'd love to turn it over to my colleague Usman Khan to share a little bit more about our commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, as well as some resources that are relevant to today's topic. Usman?
Thank you, Yas. I'm Usman, Careers Design Counselor at GSEP here. Our vision, as shared earlier at Career Services, is that every GSEP graduate will have the clarity, confidence, and community to access, thrive, and transform the future workplace. And as part of our DEIB vision and efforts, we are committed to ensuring each of you, including our students and alumni, have access to our resources and services from an equitable lens, and to foster a sense of community and belonging and purpose for each of you while being able to honor each of your diverse backgrounds and identities. And the resources we're sharing today is a DEI report from a global leadership consulting firm talking on the state of DEIB practices and how it impacts from the organizational perspective. We also have some research by Forbes on specifically DEI and how there are different things that we can be mindful of when it comes to incorporating DEI in the workplace and from an organizational perspective. We have some other resources in terms of questions when engaging for prospective employers, what to consider, and how we can integrate these practices also when it comes to DEIB metrics from a leadership perspective. And I'll pass it to Nadine for the drawing opportunity.
Hi, everybody. Just really quick, we really appreciate your feedback. So if you are able to scan the QR code on the screen, Frania will also include the link in the chat if that's easier for you. Please feel free to fill out a survey and share your thoughts. And in doing so, you are entered into a drawing, an opportunity drawing for an Amazon gift card. And on the next slide, to wrap it up real quick, we just wanted to give you a shout out to what is coming next month. So this is probably our most popular topic of jammies that we've done in the past. This will be, I believe, the third time it might be that we're doing this topic because it is so popular. So if you are interested in potentially going for your doctorate, if you are on the fence about it, or if you're sure about it and you just want to talk to people who've done it already, whether you're on the education or on the psychology side, we'll have people representing both pathways. Please feel free to join us for our next Jammy to Doctorate or Doctorate. It will be on November 13th, and Frania has also again included the registration links in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you. And I invite you all to follow us on all of our social media so you can get involved and hear more about events such as this one. And I also want to invite you on the next slide. If you are able to, we'd love to have you turn on your camera so we can take a quick. You can use your favorite emoji and I'll count to 3 and we'll go ahead and take it. So again, if you're able to, please turn on your cameras at this time. And throw up your favorite emoji in 3, 2, 1. Yay! Let's see.
That's great. Alyssa, you have a friend on there too. That's great.
Thank you all
Thank
so
you
much.
all. I'm sorry, Sophia. Thank you all for being here, taking time out of your day to be here with us, to ask such great questions, and just to invest in your own career development. So we're grateful for our panelists, our alumni who come back to give so freely and willingly, and to all of you for showing up the way that you have. So hope to see you next month. Have a great rest of your week. Thanks, everyone.